The meeting lasted less than 10 minutes, but it cut my salary in half and changed how I understood power forever. Your compensation will be reduced by 50%, my boss said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table, effective immediately. No preface, no apology, no build-up. I stayed seated, hands folded in my lap, and looked at him. On what basis he didn't hesitate. You're damaging the company's healthy culture. That phrase landed harder than the number. Healthy culture. As if it were something fragile I had cracked just by speaking. I'm Maren Whitaker, 46 years old. Operations compliance manager at a logistics firm headquartered in Minneapolis. I had been with the company long enough to know when a decision had already been made somewhere else. Sarah from Human Resources sat to his left. She didn't look at me. Her pen hovered over a blank notepad like she was waiting for something to write down, but not yet. This is disciplinary, I asked. It's corrective, my boss replied quickly. A necessary adjustment. Is there a written warning? A performance plan, I asked. No, Sarah said, finally lifting her eyes. Not at this time. I nodded once. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but my voice stayed even, understood. Both of them relaxed, just slightly. They thought that was it. I picked up the paper. It listed my name, my title, and a new salary number written in bold. No explanation, no reference to policy, no signatures beyond his. I set it back down. Can you show me which company policy allows you to reduce my salary like this? The silence was immediate and complete. My boss leaned back in his chair. Sarah's pen stopped moving altogether. It's about behavior, he said after a moment. About alignment. That's not what I asked. I said, I asked which policy. No one answered. Sarah cleared her throat. We can follow up? I'd appreciate that, I said. The meeting ended without anyone officially ending it. Chairs scraped. Papers were gathered. My boss avoided my eyes as he stood. As I walked out, I already knew two things: my pay had been cut for defending someone who couldn't protect herself. And no one in that room could explain how they were allowed to do it. That mattered more than they realized. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While the characters and events are imagined, the situations are inspired by real workplace dynamics, faced by professionals who choose integrity over silence. This story explores how power is often misused behind closed doors, and what happens when someone refuses to look away. The first time I realized this was coming had nothing to do with my salary. It started 3 weeks earlier, in a smaller room, with a younger voice shaking across the table. Evelyn missed the verification step, Sarah from HR said, tapping a printed memo. That puts the delay on her. Evelyn Park sat beside me, shoulders tight, hands clenched together. Junior analyst, 18 months in, smart, careful. Still learning how to breathe in meetings like this. That's not accurate, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it either. My boss glanced at me. Maren, let HR finish. She did finish, I said, and she's wrong. Sarah frowned. The audit log shows the verification wasn't completed. It shows the verification tool failed to sync. I replied. I emailed IT about it 2 weeks before the incident. The ticket number is in my follow-up. I slid my laptop forward and turned the screen toward them. Timestamps, error reports, a process gap. Not a person, Evelyn whispered. I followed the checklist. I know, I said, without looking at her. Sarah exhaled. Even so, we need accountability. You're asking for a signature, I said, picking up the memo. This says Evelyn was negligent. She wasn't. My boss leaned back. Maren, we need to show we're addressing issues. We are, I said, by fixing the system that caused it. Silence stretched. Then Sarah said, it would help if you were more aligned. With what? I asked. The facts or the narrative? My boss's jaw tightened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I slid the memo back across the table. Unsigned. I won't put my name on something that isn't true. Sarah's tone cooled. Noted. The meeting ended quickly after that. Evelyn followed me into the hallway, eyes glossy. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to. This isn't on you, I said. Go back to your desk. She hesitated. Are you going to be okay? I watched Sarah disappear around the corner with the memo tucked under her arm. I did my job, I said. We'll see how they take that. By the end of the day, the disciplinary action was dropped. No apology, no correction. Just quiet compliance. And a shift I felt but couldn't yet name. The shift didn't come with an announcement. It came quietly, like a door closing somewhere behind me. 2 meetings disappeared from my calendar without explanation. When I asked my boss about it, he didn't look up from his screen. "We're streamlining," he said. "Too many voices slow things down." I was responsible for those reviews. I said, "You'll get the notes afterward." I didn't. What I got instead was feedback, delivered casually in the hallway. "You're coming off rigid lately," he said, as if we were discussing weather. "Not very aligned." "Aligned with what?" I asked. He smiled, then. "The direction leadership is taking." The word leadership had started to do a lot of work. A week later, I was called into his office. No HR this time, just him. Arms folded. "I need you to be more of a team player," he said. "I am," I replied. "I just don't confuse agreement with accuracy." His expression hardened. "That right there, that tone." "My tone," I said, evenly, "or my position." "You challenge decisions in front of people," he said. "It undermines confidence." "Which decisions?" I asked. "The ones that were wrong." He stood up, signaling the conversation was nearing its limit. "This isn't about right or wrong. It's about culture." I let that sit. "So performance no longer matters." He shook his head. "Performance matters, but culture comes first." "Then define it," I said. Because from where I'm standing, culture just replaced accountability. He didn't answer. He opened his door instead. After that, messages came through other people. Instructions filtered down without context. Decisions arrived finished, with my role reduced to execution. Ryan from planning caught up with me by the elevators. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm doing my job," I said. He hesitated. "They're saying you push back too much." "I push back when something's wrong." He nodded once. "That's what I thought." By the end of the week, I understood the pattern. Facts were tolerated. Resistance was not. And the word culture had become the cleanest way to say comply. The first place I felt the cut wasn't in my pride. It was in my calendar. I sat at my kitchen table that night with my laptop open, recalculating everything I had already committed to. Mortgage, insurance, the automatic transfers I had set up years ago when stability felt permanent. I didn't curse or slam anything shut. I just adjusted numbers until they balanced again, even if the margins were suddenly thin. The next morning, I ran into my boss near the elevators. He nodded like nothing had changed. "You doing okay?" he asked. "I'm working," I said. "That's good," he replied. "Let's keep things professional." They already were. That was the problem. By mid-morning, I drafted an email. No adjectives, no accusations, just facts. Per our meeting, I wrote, "I am requesting the company policy that authorizes a reduction in base salary without prior documentation, progressive discipline, or notice. Please advise." I read it twice before sending. Then I added Sarah from HR and the internal compliance archive. Not to threaten, to record. Her response came 2 hours later. "Thank you for reaching out, Marin," she wrote. "We understand this situation may feel difficult. Leadership decisions are made in alignment with company values and culture." I stared at the screen. I replied immediately. I didn't ask about values. I asked for the policy. There was no answer that afternoon. Ryan stopped by my desk near the end of the day. "You okay?" he asked again. "I will be," I said. He lowered his voice. "They're saying you should have just let it go." "I don't let false records exist," I said. "Especially when they affect someone else." He nodded once, then left without another word. That evening, my phone buzzed. An email from Sarah. "We are reviewing the relevant documentation and will follow up. No attachment, no reference, no policy, just time." I closed my laptop and sat still for a moment. They had taken half my pay, but they were still avoiding the one thing I had asked for. And the longer they delayed, the clearer it became that the answer wasn't complicated. It didn't exist. He called me into his office late that afternoon. Door already closed when I arrived. "I just read your email," he said, holding his phone like it had personally offended him. "You're making this adversarial." "I'm documenting," I said, "not attacking." He shook his head. "You didn't need to involve compliance." "I asked for a policy," I replied. "That's where policies live." "This could have been a conversation," he said. "It was," I said. "You ended it." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You're turning a corrective step into a legal issue." "You already did," I said. When you changed my pay, his jaw tightened. You're not listening, I said. You're saying this is about culture. I'm asking how culture authorizes a salary reduction without documentation. He stood, signaling the meeting was nearing its limit. This is exactly the behavior I'm talking about. Clarity? I asked. Resistance, he said. I opened my laptop. Then help me understand. I drafted a second email while he watched, my fingers steady on the keys. Please provide the official company policies governing salary adjustment, disciplinary action, and corrective measures. I read aloud as I typed, including any approvals required and effective dates. He exhaled sharply. This isn't necessary. Then it will be easy to answer, I said. I added Sarah from HR again, then the compliance archive. Then I hit send. The room went quiet. You know this puts people on edge, he said. Accuracy does that sometimes, I replied. He didn't respond. He opened the door instead. By the time I got back to my desk, my inbox was already buzzing. A short message from Sarah. We've received your request and will review the relevant materials. No timeline, no attachments. Ryan walked past and paused. Everything okay? I asked for a policy. I said. He nodded slowly. That explains the mood upstairs. An hour later, my boss sent one last message. Let's keep things collaborative. I didn't reply. The record already was. Once a system is asked to explain itself in writing, it can no longer hide behind tone. The delay was the answer before anyone admitted it. 2 days passed, then 3. HR stopped responding altogether. When Sarah finally asked to meet, her email was careful, almost polite in a way it hadn't been before. Just a quick check-in, she wrote, to clarify a few things. The room was smaller this time, no boss. Just Sarah and a man I hadn't met before, introduced as Mark from internal compliance. He didn't shake my hand. He opened a folder. We're reviewing the documentation related to your compensation adjustment, Sarah said. I know, I replied. That's what I asked for. Mark cleared his throat. We've been unable to locate a standard policy that authorizes an immediate salary reduction without prior disciplinary steps. Sarah didn't look at him. It may have been applied as a discretionary measure. By whom? I asked. She hesitated. By leadership, so not by policy, I said. Mark glanced up. That's correct. The room shifted. It was subtle, but I felt it. Authority wasn't sitting where it used to. Sarah folded her hands. We're still gathering context. I've provided all of mine. I said emails, performance records, my refusal to sign a disciplinary memo that misrepresented the facts. Mark nodded once. We've reviewed those. And, I added, there was no approval chain for the pay change. He didn't contradict me. Sarah finally met my eyes. This review will take some time. That's fine, I said. My pay was cut in minutes. Silence settled again. Heavier now, not defensive, cautious. As I stood to leave, Sarah spoke quickly. We ask that you remain professional during this process. I have, I said, consistently. Outside the room, I saw my boss watching from the end of the hall. He didn't approach. He didn't wave. He turned away. By the end of the day, meetings were quietly rescheduled, decisions slowed. Emails started including extra names. Nothing had been fixed yet, but something had cracked. They hadn't found a policy because there wasn't one. And once that became part of the record, everything else had to be reconsidered. He caught me just before lunch, standing a little too close, voice lowered like we were sharing a secret. Can we talk? He said. Not a question. A request that expected compliance. We went into a small room near the break area. No calendar invite, no HR. I think this has gone further than it needed to, he said. We can fix it. How? I asked. He rubbed his hands together. I can reverse the pay change. Effective next cycle. We'll call it a misunderstanding. In writing, I said. He paused. There's no need to formalize it. There is, I said. The decision was formal. The correction should be too. His tone sharpened. You're making this harder. I didn't make it, I replied. I asked how it was allowed. He leaned back. Do you really want this on record? It could affect relationships? Mine already has, I said. He tried again. Softer this time. We'll restore your pay. No one needs to know the details. HR needs to know. I said. Compliance needs to know. He shook his head. That invites scrutiny. It already exists, I said. You invited it when you cut my salary without policy. Silence stretched between us. He looked past me, calculating. Think about it, he said. We can keep this clean. Clean isn't quiet, I said. Clean is correct. He stood abruptly. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to help yourself, I said, and kept my voice steady. Those are different things. When I left the room, my inbox chimed. An email from Sarah, brief and careful. HR will be expanding the scope of the review. It read, additional documentation may be requested. I forwarded it to compliance without comment. An hour later, my boss sent one last message. Let's keep this constructive. I didn't reply. The record was already speaking, and it didn't need my permission to keep going. The review stopped being theoretical the moment people from outside our building joined the call. This is Patricia Haynes from Regional Operations, the woman said, voice steady. We'll be walking through the decision timeline. Sarah from HR was already there, so was Mark from Compliance. My boss joined last, camera on, expression carefully neutral. Patricia didn't waste time. We're looking at a compensation reduction executed without documented discipline. Who authorized it? My boss spoke first. I did. Under which policy? Patricia asked. He hesitated. It was a corrective measure aligned with culture. That's not a policy, Mark said quietly. Patricia nodded. We've audited the documentation chain. There's no prior warning, no performance plan, no approval record. Sarah shifted in her chair. We're acknowledging a procedural gap. It's not a gap, Patricia said. It's a violation. No one interrupted her, she continued. The company was exposed to unnecessary risk. Wage adjustment without process creates liability. Retaliation concerns were also flagged. My boss leaned forward. That was never the intent. Intent doesn't override procedure, Patricia said. Outcome matters. She turned to me. Marin, your performance reviews show consistent compliance leadership. There's no record supporting corrective action. I asked for policy. I said, that's all. Patricia nodded once. And that's why we're here. The call ended abruptly after that. No small talk. No reassurance. Within hours, meetings were paused across the department. Approval requests stalled. Emails started copying people I had never seen included before. Later that afternoon, Sarah stopped by my desk. Her voice was lower than usual. The review confirmed the compensation change was not authorized, she said. We're preparing formal remediation. And accountability, I said. She didn't argue. When I looked up, my boss was standing across the floor, watching as Patricia spoke with Mark near the elevators. He didn't approach me. He didn't need to. The system was finally doing what it was designed to do, and it was no longer listening to him. The email arrived at 9:12 in the morning. No subject line drama, just a calendar invite titled Compensation Review Outcome. Patricia Haynes from Regional Operations was already on the call when I joined. Sarah sat beside her, posture formal. Mark from Compliance nodded once in greeting. My boss joined last, face tight, eyes fixed somewhere off-screen. Patricia spoke first. We've concluded the review. She paused, letting the words settle. The salary reduction implemented against Marin Whitaker did not follow company procedure. There was no documented discipline, no approval chain, and no policy basis. Sarah took over. Effective immediately. Marin's compensation will be restored in full, retroactive to the date of reduction. I exhaled slowly, not relief. Release. Additionally, Patricia said, all related notations in Marin's personnel record will be removed. There will be no disciplinary reference associated with this action. I nodded once. Thank you. Patricia turned to my boss. Your authority to make compensation and disciplinary decisions is suspended pending further training and oversight. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Understood, he said finally. Sarah added, a formal notice will be issued documenting the procedural violation and corrective steps. Silence followed, not awkward, final. After the call ended, Sarah stopped by my desk with a printed letter. This confirms the restoration and record correction, she said. Her voice was professional again, careful in a different way. Thank you, I said. Ryan appeared a few minutes later, eyes wide. It's official, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. Across the floor. My boss packed a folder into his bag. He didn't look up when he passed. No apology, no explanation, just distance. Later that afternoon, an internal memo went out announcing interim changes to approval processes, new controls, additional oversight, language about accountability and risk mitigation. Nothing in it mentioned my name. That was fine. The correction had been made, the record was clean, and the authority that had been used against me had been reduced to what it should have been all along, not personal, procedural. The final meeting was shorter than the first one that had started all of this. Patricia sat across from me. Folder closed this time. Sarah was there too, quiet but attentive. No one spoke until Patricia did. "We need to be clear," she said. "What happened to you was retaliation disguised as culture. That's not acceptable here." I nodded. I didn't feel the need to add anything. Patricia continued, her tone firm but measured. "Policies exist to prevent exactly this kind of misuse of authority. When someone bypasses them, it doesn't just harm an employee, it weakens the entire structure." Sarah glanced at me. "We're updating internal training to reflect that." "Good," I said, because silence was treated like cooperation. Patricia closed the folder. "Your role and standing are secure. If there are any further concerns, you come directly to us." "I will," I said. As we stood to leave, Sarah hesitated. "For what it's worth, you handled this professionally. I followed the rules," I replied. "That's all." Back at my desk, my inbox was quieter than it had been in weeks. No side comments, no carefully worded warnings, just work, returned to its proper shape. Ryan stopped by once more. Guess asking the question worked. He said, "It always does," I said. Eventually, that afternoon, I passed my former boss in the hallway. He stepped aside to let me through. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The power dynamic had already shifted, not through confrontation, but through record and process. I shut down my computer at the end of the day and stood for a moment before leaving, not to celebrate, to mark the boundary I had held. Rules are not weapons for those in power. They are safeguards for those willing to stand still long enough to use them. When someone punishes you for asking how the system works, it is not because you're wrong. It is because clarity threatens control. And patience, backed by truth, will always outlast fear. My boss took everything when he fired me, and he did it in front of the people who had been waiting for it. What would you do if your career ended with one sentence spoken where no one could pretend they didn't hear it? I was still explaining the last compliance checkpoint when Daniel Cross lifted a finger. Not a hand, just one finger. "That's enough." The room went still. "Human resources," he added, already leaning back. The woman beside him opened a folder. "Meredith Hale. Effective immediately. Your employment is terminated due to procedural failures and misrepresentation of compliance status. That is inaccurate." The words came out before I could stop them. Every milestone was approved. Daniel's mouth curved slightly. Not a smile. Something rehearsed. "We're not revisiting decisions," he said. "We're moving forward." Around the table, eyes dropped. Someone shifted in their chair. No one spoke. The word landed like a switch being flipped. My screen went black. "That access has been revoked." HR continued, reading now. Voice smoother. "You'll be required to return all company property." Daniel stood and reached for my badge. He didn't wait for me to unclip it. The plastic snapped softly as he pulled it free. "Everything you have here is mine," he said, holding it up for a moment, except that laptop. He nodded toward my computer as if it were a forgotten coat. "I don't need it," he added. "Security will walk you out." I closed the laptop slowly. No one stopped me. No one asked a question. As I stood, Daniel was already turning back to the table. "Let's continue." I took 2 steps toward the door when the screen flickered once. One email, no greeting, no signature. Per contract, who is the authorized party now? I kept walking. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge ATA. The characters and events are imagined, but the power dynamics, the silence, and the consequences are painfully real. Each story we tell carries a different truth. This one begins with a dismissal and a mistake that no one in that room realized had just been made. The door closed behind me. My badge was gone. My name was already being rewritten. All I had left was the laptop Daniel Cross did not want and whatever it was about to reveal. What do you notice when the noise finally stops and you're left alone with the truth? The apartment was quiet enough that my phone buzzing sounded intrusive. I set the laptop on the table and opened it without ceremony. No passwords broken, no systems touched, just my own files, saved emails, calendar invites, meeting recaps I'd forwarded to myself for years, because Daniel liked to clean up records after the fact. I opened the contract folder first. The license agreement sat exactly where I remembered it. Third-party compliance. My name appeared once, then again, then in bold on the final page. Authorized signatory Meredith Hale. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Termination date meant nothing here. There was a clause beneath it, short, precise. Transfer of authority required written reassignment, countersigned by both parties, no reassignment, no countersignature. A knock of panic moved through my chest. My phone buzzed again. Lena. They're asking me to get your approval. I don't know what to do. Lena was 26. Brilliant, terrified of making the wrong move. I typed, deleted, then typed again. Me. Who's asking? The reply came fast. Lena. The vendor. They won't release the update without the signatory confirmation. Daniel told me to handle it. I closed my eyes. Daniel always told someone else to handle it. I called her. I didn't know they'd still use your name, she said, breathless. I swear. HR said you were. Stop. I said, listen carefully. Silence on the line. She was listening now. You're not to send anything, I went on. No approvals, no signatures, not even a draft. But he'll ask me why. Then you tell him the truth. Another pause. Which is? That authority didn't move with the badge, she swallowed. I heard it. Meredith, she said quietly. What happens now? I looked back at the screen, at my name, still where it had always been. Nothing, I said, unless someone tries to pretend it already did. When the call ended, the room felt smaller, not safer, clearer. Daniel Cross had pushed me out fast, too fast, as if time itself were a liability. I closed the laptop and left it on the table, exactly where it belonged. When everyone tells you to fight, how do you know when not to? The lawyer read the termination notice twice, then set it down with a sound that meant she'd already decided. This is a clean case, she said. Wrongful termination, defamation implied. We file immediately. Her name was Rachel Moreno. Downtown office, calm voice, sharp eyes. She spoke the way people do when they believe momentum is on their side. I don't want to file. I said. She looked up. Not surprised, curious. You've been publicly accused of misconduct. I know. They locked you out mid-meeting. I was there. Rachel leaned back. Then help me understand why you're hesitating. I slid my phone across the table and turned the screen toward her. The message from Lena was still there. The subject line from the vendor sat beneath it. Rachel read, then frowned. Authorized signatory. My name, I said, still my name. That doesn't stop a lawsuit. It does if the story changes before the paperwork lands. She waited. There's a non-disclosure clause, I continued. Broad enough to choke a career. If I sue now, he controls the narrative. I become the employee who couldn't follow process, the one who had to be escorted out. Rachel's fingers tapped once on the table. And if you don't, he rushes, I said. He signs. Signs? What responsibility? She studied me for a long moment. You're asking me to do nothing. I'm asking you to let him think I've folded. That's risky. So is a public fight I can't afford to lose. Rachel exhaled slowly. Blacklisting quietly. I said, no calls returned, no contracts, no reasons given. She nodded. She'd seen it before. If I sue now, I lose. I said, I need him to sign first. Rachel closed the folder, then we wait. For how long? Until he makes a move he can't take back. I stood, shouldering my bag. At the door, she added. When that happens, call me, don't email. I stepped outside with my phone already buzzing. A new message from Daniel. Sign the handover. Let's end this cleanly. I put the phone away and kept walking. What hurts more, being fired or being rewritten? The email reached me before Lena did. Company-wide, Daniel's name at the top. Polite subject line, neutral tone. Recent project delays stemmed from internal process failures that leadership has now addressed. addressed, past tense, clean. My phone rang a minute later. They sent it to everyone, Lena said. She didn't bother pretending she was calm. They're saying you missed approvals. I know. I said, I've read it. They're asking me questions, not directly, just comments. Like they already decided who's asking Daniel. And Mark from operations. A pause. They want me to confirm the timeline. They want me to say you were behind. And what did you say that I needed to check my notes? That was the right answer. Her voice dropped. He told me this was my chance to step up. There it was. The offer wrapped in pressure. They're not asking you to tell the truth, I said. They're asking you to repeat what they already wrote. Silence. Then, if I don't, then they'll say, you're not ready. She let out a short breath. I didn't think it would be like this. Neither did I. After we hung up, more messages came through, not questions, absences, conversations that stopped mid-thread. A calendar invite I had always been on removed without comment. By evening, Daniel messaged me directly, sign the handover, then we can all move on. I stared at the words longer than I should have. There was no apology, no acknowledgement, just an instruction, phrased like a favor. I typed once, deleted it, typed again, send the document. The reply came almost immediately. Attached, please confirm by end of day. The file name was precise, neutral, final. I opened it and read every line, twice. My name appeared only once now. Not as owner, not as lead, as the last obstacle. I closed the document without signing and set the phone face down. By the time the city went quiet, the story without me was already circulating. And tomorrow, Daniel expected my signature to make it official. What kind of surrender scares the other side the most? Daniel didn't invite me to sit. The conference room camera light was already on when I joined the call. His face filled the screen, composed, pleased with itself. Legal sat off to the side, muted. Human resources watched without blinking. The document is standard, Daniel began. Control transfers immediately. We close this today. I read it, I said. He nodded, like a man humoring a delay. Good. Then we're aligned. I scrolled to the middle. Read this section out loud. A pause? Which section? The one that starts with assumption of responsibility. Daniel waved it off. That's boilerplate. It isn't, I said. Please read it. He smiled again, smaller this time. We don't need to perform. Legal shifted in their chair, still muted. I continued. Transfer of control. Transfer of delivery obligations. Transfer of compliance liability. End to end. Daniel leaned closer to the camera. You're done here, Meredith. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm not, I said. I'm making it accurate. He exhaled, impatient. Sign it. I signed. My name appeared once. Clean and final. Daniel didn't hesitate. His signature landed seconds later. He didn't scroll, didn't ask legal to confirm. He glanced up with a look I recognized the relief of someone who believed the risk had passed. There, he said. You just signed away your career. No one corrected him. The call ended without ceremony. No goodbye, no follow-up. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Daniel. We're done. Don't contact the team again. I didn't reply. A minute later, another message arrived, not from him. Lena. He's asking for the release approval, right now. I set the phone down and opened the signed document once more. The language hadn't changed, control transferred, responsibility transferred. Every deliverable, every obligation, every consequence now had a single owner, not me. I closed the file and shut the laptop. The silence felt different this time, not empty. Counted. What happens when a project keeps moving, but the approval doesn't? The first message came from someone I didn't recognize. Vendor compliance. We are pausing release pending authorized confirmation. I read it twice, then set the phone down. 5 minutes later, Lena called. They froze the deliverables, she said. Everything. The update, the handoff, all of it. Did they say why? They said the authorization didn't clear. I heard voices behind her. Tight, urgent. Daniel told them to proceed anyway, she added. They said they can't. That's accurate, I said. They're not allowed to. A beat. He's furious. I know. Another call cut in before she could say more. This one from Evan Price, the account manager at the partner firm. We had worked together for 2 years. He didn't waste words. We're holding payment, he said. No approval, no release. Understood. Your name is still listed, he went on. We flagged it last night. I'm aware. Silence. He was weighing something. Has the authority changed? No, I said, not formally. Then we wait. When the call ended, my inbox filled with alerts. Status changed, timeline shifted, red where there had been green. Lena texted again. Lena. They're asking why you haven't signed off, I typed slowly. Me, because I'm no longer responsible. She didn't respond right away. When she did, it was only one line. Lena. He's telling legal, this is your fault. I closed my eyes. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. Daniel's number, I let it ring. A voicemail followed. Meredith, his voice snapped. This is getting out of hand. Sign the release and stop playing games. I didn't call back. Another message arrived, this time from legal. Legal. We are reviewing the authorization gap. Please stand by. Stand by. The system hadn't stopped. It had slowed, tightened, and begun asking for names. I set the phone face down and waited. How many warnings does it take before pride becomes evidence? Legal reached out before Daniel did. We need to talk. The message read, no greeting, no signature. The call connected with 3 faces on the screen. 2 attorneys, 1 compliance officer I recognized but had never spoken to directly. The partner has requested an external audit, one of them began. Standard procedure when authorization gaps appear. Daniel cut in immediately. We don't have time for that. Silence followed, not agreement, measurement. The deadline is fixed, he continued. The board is already asking questions. An audit delays everything. The compliance officer leaned forward. An audit protects the company. Daniel smiled tightly. I built this project. I know what's in it. One of the attorneys tried again. Daniel, this is a recommendation. Declining it increases risk, then we accept the risk. He said, send me whatever I need to sign. No one spoke for a moment. We need that in writing, the attorney said at last. Fine. A document appeared in the chat. Short, direct, the kind designed to be ignored. Daniel didn't read it. He never did when he thought speed was strength. He signed. The compliance officer cleared her throat. For the record, this confirms you are declining independent review against counsel's advice. Noted, Daniel replied. Now let's move forward. The attorney nodded once. We'll document that. The call ended. My phone buzzed seconds later. A message from legal. Legal. The waiver is executed. I didn't reply. Another message followed, this one from Lena. Lena. He told everyone this is almost resolved. I looked at the screen and imagined Daniel's confidence, the way he liked to close doors with his back straight and his voice steady. He thought the delay was a nuisance, a technicality, something to muscle through. He didn't realize the door had already closed, and this time, it had locked from the inside. Have you ever watched someone realize too late that the rules still apply to them? The meeting invite landed without explanation. Mandatory, immediate. When the call opened, the screen filled fast. Daniel. 2 members of leadership, legal, and a new square I didn't recognize. Thomas Reed, outside counsel for the partner firm. He didn't smile. We'll begin. Thomas said, no preamble. This is a notice of material breach. Legal stiffened. Daniel leaned back, arms crossed. Thomas continued. Unauthorized release attempts. Failure to provide valid signatory approval. Non-compliance with contractual safeguards. Daniel cut in. We've already addressed the authorization. You addressed control. Thomas replied, not authority. He shared his screen. A document appeared, dates, clauses, a highlighted line, per agreement, Thomas went on. Any release without authorized confirmation constitutes breach. Penalties accrue daily until remediation. One of the executives cleared his throat. What penalties? Thomas didn't hesitate. Suspension of payment, recovery of advance funds, liquidated damages in the amount of $250,000. Potential termination for cause. The room went quiet. Legal spoke carefully. We declined an audit. Thomas nodded. We saw the waiver. Daniel leaned forward now. This is exaggerated. We can resolve it. Legal turned toward him, voice lowered. Daniel. He looked at them, annoyed. You personally assumed this liability. The words landed differently than everything before them. Daniel blinked. What? Legal didn't repeat it. They didn't need to. They pulled up the handover document, his signature, the clause beneath it. Assumption of responsibility. End to end. Thomas closed the file. Our position is clear. Leadership exchanged looks. No one defended Daniel. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The confidence drained in stages. First the smile, then the posture. Finally, the certainty. For the first time since this began, Daniel looked at me. Not angry, not dismissive, measured. The call ended without ceremony. No shouting, no accusations, just outcomes. When the screen went dark, my phone buzzed once. Legal. We'll take it from here. I set the phone down and let the silence do its work. What does winning look like when no one is clapping? The first confirmation came from legal. Daniel Cross has been removed from the project. The message read, no explanation, no apology, just a fact. An hour later. Lena called. They pulled his access, she said. Her voice carried something new. Relief edged with disbelief. He didn't even say goodbye. Who's leading now interim committee? They told us not to discuss it. That means they're discussing it, I said. She let out a small laugh, then stopped herself. I didn't think this would actually happen. Neither did he. The next call came from a number I recognized. Meredith, Evan said. I'll keep this short. I appreciate that. Our position hasn't changed, he continued. We need someone who understands the compliance structure and can sign without delays. And the board asked me to reach out directly. Are you available to consult independently? I didn't answer right away. I'm not asking for an answer today, Evan added. But we're moving forward, with or without your former company. When the call ended, I sat with the phone in my hand longer than necessary. Another message came in, this time from legal. Legal. The internal review is ongoing. You're not implicated, as if that had ever been in doubt. By evening, the noise I had lived inside for months finally receded. No urgent messages, no warnings, no instructions disguised as favors. I opened the laptop and reviewed the consulting agreement Evan had sent. My name appeared where it should. Authority defined, scope clear, no rush, no pressure. Lena texted one last time before midnight. Lena, I told them you taught me everything that matters. I typed back a single line, me. Then remember it. I closed the laptop without signing. Tomorrow would be soon enough. What if the real victory isn't revenge, but walking away clean? The contract arrived just after 9 in the morning. No cover letter, no pressure. Just a clean document and a single line from Evan. Take your time. This is written the way it should have been the first time. I opened it slowly. My name sat at the top. Unambiguous. Not buried, not conditional. Authorized party Meredith Hale. Scope defined. Liability assigned clearly. Exit terms written in plain language, not traps. I read every line, then read it again. My phone buzzed once. Everything looks good on our end. Evan said when I answered. If you're ready, I am. I said. There was a pause. Then a quiet acknowledgement. Welcome aboard. I signed. The confirmation email followed within minutes. Authorization confirmed. That was it. No applause, no announcement, no final meeting where someone pretended this had all been handled gracefully. Later that afternoon, Lena texted. They told us not to contact you anymore, she wrote. So I guess this is me not contacting you. I smiled. You'll do fine. What about him, she asked. I don't manage that anymore. Daniel Cross took everything he asked for. The project, the authority, the responsibility that came with both. The investigation would finish without my input. The outcome would land where it belonged. I closed the laptop and left it on the table. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to check one more message or anticipate the next demand. I walked out into a future that did not require my silence or my erasure. Power doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the person who understands the rules, protects their name, and knows when to let others carry the weight of what they insisted on taking. I was still half conscious in a hospital bed when my boss decided to fire me. The phone started vibrating against my palm before I even realized where I was. I answered on instinct. "What the hell are you doing?" Greg Hollister's voice came through sharp and impatient. "No greeting, no concern. You're supposed to be at the office. If you're not here right now, stay home permanently." I swallowed, my throat dry. "Greg, I'm in the hospital. I was in a car accident last night." There was a pause, just long enough for me to think he might ask if I was okay. Instead, he exhaled through his nose. "That's not my problem. I need you here. We have deals moving." "I can't," I said. "I'm hooked to an IV." Another pause, colder this time. "If you can talk, you can work," he said. Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone, waiting for the shock to wear off. It didn't. 5 minutes later, a message lit up the screen. "Human Resources. Your contract is terminated effective immediately." I read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. My hand shook as I lowered the phone to my chest, careful not to tug the tubing taped to my arm. A nurse walked past the doorway, smiling at someone down the hall. Life continued at a normal pace everywhere except where I was lying. "My name is Maribel Knox. I had worked at that company for 7 years. I had never missed a critical approval. I had stayed late more times than I could count. And that morning, none of it mattered. Greg hadn't asked where I was. HR hadn't asked what happened. They had decided I was replaceable while I was still bleeding." The phone buzzed again. Not an apology, not concern, just silence afterward. I closed my eyes and let the truth settle in. Whatever loyalty I thought existed had just been erased with one sentence and one text message. I was no longer an employee, and they had no idea what they had just set in motion. The story you are about to hear is a fictional narrative created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While inspired by real workplace power dynamics and emotional truths many professionals face, all characters, companies, and events are works of fiction. This story explores accountability, dignity, and the consequences of underestimating the wrong person. The doctor came in just after the nurse finished checking my vitals. "You were lucky," he said, flipping through my chart, "another few inches, and the impact would have been much worse. Internal bleeding, head trauma. You don't walk away from that." I nodded slowly. My head still throbbed. So I wasn't being dramatic. He gave a small professional smile. "No, you were very close to not waking up this morning." After he left, my phone vibrated again. An email this time. "Information technology. Please arrange the return of your company-issued laptop and access badge within 24 hours. No greeting, no name, just procedure." A moment later, another notification followed. "Security services. Your building access has been revoked." I stared at the screen, waiting for a follow-up message. Something human, something like, "Are you safe, or we heard you were in an accident?" Nothing came. The nurse returned to adjust the drip. She noticed my expression. "Everything okay? I lost my job," I said. The words felt unreal when I said them out loud. She paused. "Today?" "Yes." She frowned. "While you're here," I nodded. "That's..." She stopped herself, then finished quietly. "I'm sorry." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a short message from someone in operations. "Hey, HR says you're no longer active. Do you know who's covering your approvals?" I didn't answer. Another message came in. This one from a junior analyst I'd mentored for years. "They locked me out of the workflow. Everything's stuck." I set the phone face down on the bed. They hadn't asked where I was. They hadn't asked what happened. They had simply erased me and kept moving. The nurse finished her work and stepped back. "Try to rest," she said gently, after she left. I picked up my phone again. No missed calls, no concern, just requests and revocations. That was when the last piece fell into place. I had given them everything they asked for: time, loyalty, silence, and the moment I couldn't perform, they didn't even pause. They just reached for the delete button. I logged in out of habit, not intention. My thumb moved before my brain caught up, opening the work dashboard the same way it had every morning for years. The screen loaded without hesitation, no error, no lockout. Everything was still there. At the top of the queue sat a single item, flagged in red: Status pending final authorization. I knew that transaction. Everyone did. It had been looming for weeks, whispered about in meetings like a storm no one wanted to name. A cross-border acquisition tied to logistics expansion, valued just over $50 million. Too large to auto-clear, too sensitive to delegate. My phone buzzed almost immediately, a message from Evan, one of the directors I'd worked with for years. Hey, Maribel. Quick thing. Can you approve the pipeline? We're up against the wire. I didn't reply. Another message followed, more cautious this time. HR says you're out, but the system still shows you as final sign-off. Is that a glitch? I stared at the screen, my pulse steady now in a way it hadn't been all morning. It wasn't a glitch. Every deal above 50 million required my authorization token. Not a password. Not a manager override. A layered approval system I'd helped design myself after a near-miss audit years earlier. At the time, Greg had rolled his eyes. Overkill, he'd called it. You worry too much. The memory made my jaw tighten. Evan sent one more message. They're asking if you can just approve it from home. From home. I looked down at the hospital bracelet still wrapped around my wrist, the IV line taped beside it. The termination text sat unread in my notifications now. Old news already. I typed slowly, carefully. I'm not authorized to approve anything, I wrote. According to HR, I don't work there anymore. 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then his reply came back. That's a problem. I locked the screen and let my hand rest on the bed. They had fired me as if I were a delay. They had moved on as if I were optional. But the deal was still waiting, and without my signature, so were they. I asked the nurse to bring my bag closer. She did without questions, sliding it within reach before stepping back out. My hands were steadier now as I pulled out my laptop and opened the contract file I hadn't looked at in years. The document felt heavier than it should have. I scrolled past the compensation section, the confidentiality language, the paragraphs Greg had skimmed through with bored impatience during my onboarding. Then I found it, a subsection buried under compliance procedures, written in language no one ever thought would matter. In the event of termination not executed in accordance with company policy, all authorization rights tied to the employee's role are suspended immediately until review. I read it twice, then again. My phone rang as if on cue. Maribel. The voice on the other end was calm, measured. Dana Whitaker, an attorney I'd worked with years ago on an audit review, not a close friend, but someone I trusted to be precise. I need you to listen carefully, I said. I was terminated this morning, from a hospital bed. There was a pause. Were you formally notified? Yes. Text message. No paperwork. No review. And they're still operating under your authorization, she asked. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Then they're exposed. I closed my eyes. Say that again. If the termination didn't follow protocol, they cannot legally rely on your approval rights, Dana said. Those should be suspended immediately. Any continued use puts the liability on them, so I shouldn't approve anything. No, she said firmly. You should revoke access, document everything, and do not engage emotionally. Let the process speak. I glanced at the contract again, at the clause Greg had once waved away. Does this protect me? I asked. It already has, Dana replied. They just haven't realized it yet. The call ended quietly. No celebration, no rush of triumph, just certainty. I minimized the contract window and opened the system dashboard again. The pending transaction still glowed at the top, waiting for something that would never come automatically. For the first time since waking up, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. And whatever came next would be on record, by the book, and impossible to undo. The HR message was still open when I looked at my phone again. Your contract is terminated, effective immediately. No signature. No explanation. Just a sentence designed to close a door. I read it once more, slower this time, letting the weight of it settle. Then I tapped back to the system app. A notification banner slid down from the top of the screen, automatic and indifferent. Action required pending final authorization. I didn't rush. I opened the authorization panel the way I had hundreds of times before. The interface was familiar, almost comforting in its precision. My name was still there, my role, my token. The nurse stepped in to check the line in my arm. You okay? I will be, I said, She nodded and stepped back out. I tapped the revocation option. A confirmation window appeared. Revoking authorization will suspend all approvals associated with this role. I hesitated for a single breath, not out of fear, but because I understood exactly what would follow. Then I pressed confirm. The screen refreshed. Authorization status revoked. Almost immediately, alerts began stacking in the activity log. The transaction at the top of the queue shifted from pending to frozen. A system-generated notice populated beneath it, time-stamped to the second. Final approval unavailable. Transaction suspended. Another notification followed, then another. Automated emails triggered in sequence, routed to executive leadership, compliance, and legal. My phone rang. I let it ring. A second call came in, then a third. A message popped up from Evan. Maribel, something just happened. The deal is locked. I typed back one sentence. HR ended my authority. 3 dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. That's not how this was supposed to go. I set the phone down on the bed, my hand steady now, my mind clear. They had pressed send without thinking 5 minutes earlier. Now the system was responding exactly as it had been designed to. There was no undo button. And whatever came next would be far louder than a text message. How loud does silence get when $50 million goes nowhere? My phone didn't ring at first. It exploded. The first call came from HR. I answered that one. There's been a miscommunication, the woman said quickly. I recognized her voice from onboarding calls years ago. Calm by training, strained now. Your termination is under review. We just need you to restore access while we sort this out. I don't have access. I said. HR ended it. A pause. Papers shuffled. You can't just shut down approvals. I didn't. I replied. Your message did. She inhaled, sharp and shallow. We'll call you back. The next call came from an unfamiliar number. I answered it. This is Robert Hale, the man said. Chief Executive Officer. I sat up a little straighter. Yes, what did you do? He asked. Nothing, I said. I stopped being allowed to. Silence stretched between us. I could hear breathing on the other end. Controlled but tight. You understand the scale of what's frozen, he said. This deal closes today. I understand, I said. I also understand I was terminated this morning. That's being reviewed, he said again. More force this time. After the fact, I said. After my authority was removed. Another pause. His voice dropped. We need this fixed. You needed it handled before you fired me, I said. From a hospital bed. The call ended without goodbye. A voicemail appeared seconds later. Greg. You think you're being clever, his voice snarled. You're interfering with company business. You're going to regret this. I listened to it once. I didn't delete it. Messages stacked up across my screen. Operations, legal, someone from compliance asking for timestamps, someone else asking if I was feeling better, as if that might soften things. I didn't answer. They had all the urgency in the world now. Every second mattered to them. Every minute cost them something. For the first time all day, the imbalance was gone. They weren't waiting on my recovery anymore. They were waiting on my decision. What do powerful people say when they're no longer in control? The meeting invite came through as urgent. No agenda, no apologies. Just a link and a timestamp that assumed I would show up. I joined from my phone. Cameras were already on. Robert Hale sat at the center of the screen, jaw tight. 2 people from legal flanked him. Greg was there too, shoulders squared like he was still in charge. This shouldn't have escalated like this, Robert began. We're here to resolve. Greg cut in. She overreacted. We were under pressure. She knows that. I didn't respond. Greg leaned closer to his camera. You didn't even try to work with us. You just pulled the plug. I looked directly at him. You told me if I could talk, I could work. The room went still. You said it. I continued, my voice steady. From a hospital bed. While I was hooked to an AV, you said if I wasn't there, I should stay home permanently. That's not what I meant, he snapped. It's exactly what you said, I replied. And HR followed through. Robert raised a hand. Enough. Maribel, what do you want? I didn't rush to answer. First, I said, my termination is reversed in writing, effective immediately. Second, all communication goes through legal. Third, Greg is removed from any role involving approvals or personnel decisions. Greg laughed, short and sharp. You don't get to make demands. Robert didn't look at him. Continue. I won't restore authorization until those conditions are met, I said, and I won't respond to threats. Greg's face flushed. This is extortion. No, I said. This is documentation. One of the lawyers cleared her throat. We need a moment, Robert nodded. Greg, step off the call. What Greg said. You can't be serious. Now, Robert said. Greg disappeared from the screen. Robert exhaled slowly and looked back at me. Give us 10 minutes. I'll be here, I said. So will the system. The call went silent. For the first time since that morning, I wasn't defending myself. I was being listened to. What does accountability look like when it finally arrives? The next call came from legal, not HR. This conversation is being documented, the woman said. She introduced herself as Claire Morgan, senior counsel. Her tone was careful, deliberate. An internal investigation has been opened regarding your termination. I assumed it would be, I said. There were procedural violations, she continued. Multiple. The termination was not authorized under policy, particularly given your medical status. I said nothing, effective immediately, she added. Greg Hollister has been placed on administrative leave. The words landed quietly, but they stayed. Later that afternoon, Robert Hale called again. His voice sounded older this time. We reviewed the call recording, he said. And the HR timeline. You found the message. I said, we found all of it. He replied. Greg exceeded his authority. His actions exposed the company to significant risk. And the deal, I asked. It remains frozen, he said. Compliance won't release it until this is resolved. A pause followed. Then he spoke again. Greg's employment has been terminated for misconduct. I closed my eyes for a moment, not out of relief, out of finality. That decision was unanimous, he added. No severance. Another call came in before the day was over. This one from Dana. They admitted wrongful termination, she said. In writing. Keep that, I will, I said. Do not restore access yet, she continued. Let them formalize everything. I'm not rushing, I replied. Emails followed, one after another. Apologies drafted by committees. Assurances filtered through legal language. Requests framed as cooperation rather than demand. The system remained locked. The transaction stayed frozen. Every clock inside that company was now tied to a decision they could no longer control. By evening, the nurse came in to adjust my IV. She glanced at my phone lighting up again and shook her head. Busy job, she said. Not anymore, I replied. The silence that followed felt different now. Not empty, not waiting, structured, and expensive. What's worse than losing money or being forced to admit why the settlement call was short? That was the first thing I noticed. Robert Hale spoke carefully, as if every word had been weighed by 3 attorneys before reaching me. We've reached an agreement, he said. Legal liability will be recorded. The transaction will be released after compliance signs off. Recorded how I asked. As a disclosed legal obligation, he said. The amount is $50 million. There it was. Out in the open. No longer a rumor. No longer a delay blamed on systems or timing. A number with a reason attached to it. The shareholders have been informed, he added. They will see it in the next report. I could hear the strain now. The cost of having to explain something that never should have happened. And my position, I asked. We're prepared to reinstate you immediately, he said. With revised terms. I didn't answer right away. Dana's voice cut in through the speaker. Say what you want, Maribel. I took a breath. I won't be returning. There was a pause. May I ask why Robert said, because I don't work where people have to get hurt before they're believed, I said. Another pause. He didn't argue. The paperwork arrived an hour later. Formal language, careful phrasing. A confirmation that the termination had been wrongful. A confirmation that the liability was real. Dana skimmed it with me. This is clean, she said. They're owning it. They have to, I replied. It's public now. When the call ended, my phone went quiet for the first time all day. No executives. No requests. No urgency. I hadn't erased anything. I hadn't stolen a cent. I had forced the truth to show up on the balance sheet. And once it was there, it couldn't be ignored. What if the moment they tried to erase you became the moment they lost everything? The settlement notice arrived while I was still in recovery. Dana forwarded it without commentary, just the document and a timestamp. I read it once, then again. Wrongful termination acknowledged. Legal liability recorded. $50 million listed as a disclosed obligation, effective immediately. The nurse came in as I finished reading. You look lighter, she said, adjusting the monitor. I feel finished, I replied. My phone buzzed again, this time with a news alert. Executive dismissal confirmed. Greg Hollister's name attached to the phrase gross misconduct in a headline that didn't mention me at all. It didn't need to. Dana called a few minutes later. You don't have to respond to anything else, she said. They're done. I know, I said. I opened my email one last time and wrote a message to Robert Hale. No anger, no conditions, just facts. The settlement has been received. My access remains revoked. Please confirm all future communication goes through counsel. I hit send and closed the app. There were no follow-up calls, no attempts to negotiate, no final speeches about misunderstandings or pressure. The system moved forward without me, slower now, heavier with consequences. A doctor stopped by before the end of the shift. You're healing well, he said. You'll be discharged soon. Thank you, I said. When he left, I lay back and let the quiet settle. Not the kind of quiet that waits, the kind that ends something. I didn't destroy the company. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't take what wasn't mine. I made them say out loud what they tried to bury. I made them record it. I made them pay for it. They called me replaceable while I was broken. So I showed them what happened when the wrong person was removed.